Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Lawyers of Reddit. What is the most outrageous case someone has asked you to take? Family law attorney here. I just had a custody case go back to court over eyeglasses. My client didn't like the glasses her ex bought the kid. So stupid. I want to go back to criminal defense. Gang homicide cases had nicer people to deal with than family law. I'm not a lawyer, but as a child, I was taken into foster care and then returned to my father's custody, so he had custody of me from ages 4 to 16. When I was 22, he tried to sue me for the costs involved in caring for me for that time, saying that he had no obligation to take custody of me and had only done so to save me from foster care. It was obviously dismissed and I don't talk to him anymore. As a public defender, I defended a grown man accused of stealing magic cards from Walmart. There was an hour-long security video meticulously showing, from dozens of angles, that he was picking up sets of cards, unwrapping them, and discarding the wrappers around the store. He insisted that he was innocent, and we actually went to a jury trial instead of securing a plea deal. It took the jury 8 minutes to convict him, and the judge laid into my client, telling him that he was the worst thief he had ever seen. I forgot the best part. At one point in the trial, I had to spend 45 minutes explaining to the judge what magic cards are. He couldn't understand why anyone need more than one deck. I worked on a custody dispute between a mother and a grandmother where both sides were absolutely outraged by the other's claims. The mother was very upset that she was alleged to have been a stripper. I was a P, but I was never a stripper. The grandmother, in return, was furious that she was alleged to have 21 cats in her 2-bedroom apartment. We only have 17 cats. How dare she flat out lie and say we have 21 cats? The child ended up living with the father in a different state. A woman called saying that she had a product liability suit involving animal crackers she gave to her daughter. I was thinking it was going to be something to do with food poisoning and keep listening. She explained that when she looked at the crackers, it looked like the monkey was holding its pee. It was a banana. The woman was mortified and ashamed. She said she told all her co-workers and they were very shocked and uncomfortable. I wanted to tell her she was nuts and that they were probably freaked out because you were talking about animal cracker D's. A year out of law school, I once had a potential client who wanted me to sue Canada. Apparently, he could not get into the country due to his felony record. I tried to reason with him that it was up to the sovereign nation to set its own rules regarding entry to the country, but he insisted that we could make a lot of money suing Canada. I didn't take the case, but I told him I might be able to get him a letter that said, "Sorry," from Canada. I had a potential client come and say that he wanted to sue his uncle for murder. Setting aside the fact that you can't sue someone for murder, I asked him who did his uncle murder. He replied, "Me." I turned the case down. While working at a plaintiff's employment firm, 2 memorable consults came in. 1. Guy gets fired for being late too much, wants to sue for discrimination because he has a sugar addiction and needs to stop at 7-Eleven for a big gulp before his shift begins. As a result, he usually ends up missing the bus. 2. A woman comes in, she was a bus driver and was terminated during her probationary period. She had 3 accidents in 6 weeks. She wants to sue for discrimination because she has anxiety and a therapy rabbit. All the while sitting at the conference room table petting the therapy bunny. I used to work at a firm that did workers' comp bad faith and then also did maritime personal injury plaintiffs work. The best stories come from the maritime guys. I'm not a lawyer and this was before my time, but it was one of those stories that just got told about crazy clients. One guy was hurt offshore. Legit injury, but drilling company won't settle, so it goes to trial. The guy is from some small rural town in East Texas, and that is where the trial is set. During one of his depositions, our client shows up in a t-shirt that has a silhouette of a woman dangling from a stripper pole. At the bottom, there is text that says, "I support single mothers." Perfect! Just what we need for a video deposition. Later, if I'm not confusing two clients, we go to trial, and right as it's about to start, the client goes, "I was hoping we didn't get this, judge." And our lawyer thinks that is strange and asks him why he hoped that. Apparently, our client killed the judge's nephew or something during a breaking and entering via the stand your ground / castle doctrine a few years prior. It was a huge case in this little small town, and it was something the client neglected to mention at any point prior. Perfect. Great thing to know as trial is beginning. We won the case. Still not sure how. The day after President Obama won the election in 2008, I had a potential client cold call for a claim of copyright infringement. He wanted to sue then-President-elect Obama for having 7 US flags on the podium during his acceptance speech. I asked him for a registration number so I could verify details, and he hung up on me. The potential client claimed he had copyrighted the use of 7 flags on a stage for presentations. This is ridiculous and would never have been allowed a registration. But he didn't know that. Likely, the potential client was high, drunk, or a scammer. My guess is he wanted to file a lawsuit, then sit down in a boardroom during pre-trial motions and try to settle for a nominal sum. He would then get a few thousand, minus lawyer fees, and go away. Unfortunately, the potential client didn't understand, 1, you need a copyright registration before you file a lawsuit, 2, you would never get a registration for having 7 flags in a backdrop of a stage, 3, that he was going to get nothing from then-President-elect Obama because he would have had a firecracker team of lawyers at his avail, and 4, homie, don't play that. It would have been unethical for me to file that lawsuit as I didn't think it had a chance of H in succeeding. I thought it was frivolous and didn't want to test local Rule 11 jurisprudence, i.e. receive sanctions or lose my license. When I asked for his registration number, that was a clue I knew what he was doing and he bailed. There's a lot of them. I've been asked to evict a ghost. I actually did that one. I regularly get phone calls promising to make me a millionaire if I'll sue the police. There's the completely guilty S-offender sitting in jail who wanted me to handle his appeal under circumstances that would have resulted in him being released, then immediately charged and convicted of a more serious crime. So many. I've been asked to evict a ghost. I actually did that one. More please. How did you do it? The ghost. Okay, so in the first place, it's always nice to get a client from a business card you left at a diner. It means people pick those things up. However, when leaving business cards at diners in certain areas of town, I should expect some issues. This call came through on a dreary December day as I was sipping coffee and watching the snow fall. The caller ID read that it was the local hospital, and as I picked up, I spoke to a rather frantic young man who informed me he was being held against his will and he needed an attorney to help him. When I asked where he was, he simply said, the 5th floor. While this may sound innocuous, every hospital has a 5th floor where Napoleon roams the halls freely and the residents speak to their imaginary friends who may or may not have been an influencing factor in why they decided that clothing was a way for the government to track them and therefore the only solution was to create poop pants to throw off the monitoring ability of the CIA. Long story short on this portion, within an hour of the call, a friend had dropped off my fee and I was en route to the 5th floor to meet with my new client. I assumed it would be an involuntary committal defense, and after speaking with my client, I gauged that while the man was most definitely in need of mental care, he was not a danger to himself or others and was unlikely to be one. He had, in my opinion, been forced to agree to being committed by his probation officer, and frankly, I wasn't going to let that stand. I got the name of some contacts from his treatment plan who were willing to vouch that he had, until recently, been compliant with his medications, and contacted a social worker who was able to confirm that, yes, since he had ceased taking the medication due to an inability to afford the medication, the county would assist him with it. A slam dunk. I would simply swing my big lawyer D around the mental ward and get him released, then appear in the court to defend against the involuntary committal. Within 24 hours of being committed, my client was back at home. A hearing was set a couple weeks in the future, and I did daily checks to be certain he was compliant with his medication leading up to the hearing. Until the one day I didn't. A call from the local police was my tip-off. An older officer, one I was familiar with, called to advise they had responded to a disturbance at my client's house. He apparently had been screaming in an empty room loud enough that the neighbors were concerned and called the police. The police officer, a friendly sort, gauged the situation and decided my client wasn't a threat, but asked what the situation was. "The ghost," my client responded. "The ghost won't get out, and it won't leave me alone." "Well," said the officer, "I can tell it to leave." So he did. He told the ghost to leave. And then, apparently for S and giggles, told them that it was a civil matter if the ghost refused to leave, and therefore an attorney would need to be contacted. At which point my client dropped my name, which resulted in the cop giving me a heads up. So I call my client, who is inconsolable at the concept of sharing his home with the ghost. Keep in mind, I've been to this guy's house. This is the first I've heard of a ghost. But there is a competency hearing on the horizon, and this will not play well in front of the judge. The cop said it's a civil matter. My client repeated about the 18th time after I told him I was not, in fact, a priest, but was a lawyer and didn't know how to perform an exorcism. "What do you want me to do?" I snapped a bit. "Evict it?" There are moments in time when you should keep your mouth shut. This is one of them, because the immediate response was, "Can you? That'd be great." Well, yes. So, long story short, I ended up driving out there with a mock-up notice to quit addressed to any spirits in possession of the property located at 1313 Mockingbird Lane without any authority under color of law, advising them that their possession was unlawful in nature and ordering them to quit and surrender the premises or any portion thereof within 15 days of the date of this notice. As I was obviously unable to obtain personal service via hand delivery, I had my client direct me to the portion of the premises the ghost occupied, an empty spare bedroom, and made service by posting the notice to the door of the room. I then announced that the ghost had been served a valid notice to quit and surrender possession, and went home. A week later, as we're preparing to enter the court for my client's competency hearing, I ask about the status. "Oh, Mr. Creepy, it worked great," my client announced. "He moved out the same night and took all his stuff with him." The ghost apparently had stuff. Anyhow, I smiled and patted my client on the shoulder as I offered some sage advice. "Well, good," I said. "Now, let's not mention this in front of the judge. He might have a problem with the service and order us to let the ghost back in if he finds out about it." My client nodded enthusiastically. I kept him out of the mental hospital that day, and take some comfort knowing somewhere today this crazy bee is still telling people about his great lawyer who got rid of his ethereal roommate for free. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.